When they ask about availability, don't apologize for being a parent.
You're helping me after what they did to you?
The woman beside Marcus looked up, startled, like she hadn't expected kindness to survive in a place like this. "You're helping me after what they did to you?" Marcus let out a breath that was half laugh, half exhaustion. "Because you're walking into the same room," he said, voice low so the other applicants wouldn't hear. "And nobody deserves to be laughed at for loving their kid." She studied him for a second. Sharp eyes, steady hands, a calm that looked practiced. Then she glanced at the door at the end of the hall where the frosted glass read, "Human Resources." "What if they do it again?" she asked. Marcus didn't look away. "Then you keep your chin up," he said, "and you make them choke on their own arrogance." The receptionist called her name. The woman rose, adjusted her blazer, and held her folder like it weighed more than paper. "Thank you," she said simply. Marcus nodded once. "Good luck." And she walked toward the interview room like she was stepping into weather. Marcus didn't know it yet, didn't even have the energy to imagine it, but the person he had just coached was about to turn the lights on in a building that had taught him to live in the dark. A few hours earlier, his day had started the way most of his days did now, too fast, too heavy, and already running behind. In a small apartment in Queens, the kitchen light flickered as if it was tired of showing the same scene. A pan warmed on the stove, a lunchbox sat open on the table, and Marcus Reed stood in front of a mirror that had seen too much. He was a black father in a city that loved to call itself modern until it met the kind of truth that didn't fit neatly on a brochure. His tie was navy, slightly worn at the edges, ironed so many times it had softened like fabric that had surrendered. He looped it with careful hands, not because he enjoyed dressing up, but because he understood the rules of rooms he wasn't always welcome in. Behind him, Naya padded into the kitchen in pink socks, hair wild from sleep, holding a purple hair clip like it was a medal. "Daddy," she said, climbing onto a chair. "Can you do it? The twisty one." Marcus turned and smiled, and in that smile there was a whole life of trying to keep his daughter from seeing the cracks. "The twisty one," he said, "is advanced level. It requires patience." Naya giggled. "I have patience." "You do not," Marcus said, and she squealed in protest. He moved behind her, gentle and precise, fingers parting curls, twisting sections the way he'd learned to do by watching videos late at night with earbuds in. In the quiet of that small apartment, he did it like it mattered, because it did. Nia's voice dropped to a whisper, as if asking too loudly might change the answer. "Do you think you'll get the job?" Marcus paused. He didn't lie to his daughter. He just chose which truth she was ready for. "I think," he said carefully, "I'm going to do my best." Naya watched his face as if she could read tomorrow in his eyes. "If they say no," she said, "you can still be my daddy." Marcus laughed softly. The sound carried something fragile. "Always," he said, "no matter what they say." He clipped the purple hair clip into her hair. Click. Like sealing a promise. 2 years ago, there had been another adult voice in the apartment, another toothbrush in the cup, another set of hands to help carry the weight. His wife had died fast, the way tragedies do when they don't care if you're ready. A hospital room, a monitor that went from beeping to silence, a doctor who used gentle words that still felt like knives. Since then, Marcus had learned that grief didn't end. It just moved into the corners and waited. He'd worked whatever he could. Warehouse shifts, temp office gigs, deliveries late at night when the city pretended not to see the people who kept it running. And every time he started to stabilize, something shifted. A contract ended, childcare fell through, rent climbed like it had a personal vendetta. This interview, Ravenhurst Solutions, wasn't a dream job. It was something steadier, better hours, benefits, a chance to stop living like one emergency away from disaster. He packed Naya's lunch, tied the last knot of his tie, and kissed the top of her head. At the school entrance, Naya ran ahead, then turned back and waved like she was sending him into battle. "Bring home good news," she shouted. Marcus lifted his hand, smiling. "I'm gonna try," he called back. He watched her disappear into the building, swallowed by the noise of other kids and bright posters and teachers who had learned how to smile even when they were tired. When she was out of sight, Marcus exhaled. The mask slipped for half a second. He pressed his fingertips to his forehead, then lowered his hand and walked toward the subway. New York moved with the confidence of a machine that didn't care who got crushed under it. The platform smelled like metal and old rain. Marcus stood among strangers, clutching his folder, feeling the weight of paper that was supposed to represent a person. When the train arrived, it roared like impatience. On the ride into Manhattan, Marcus rehearsed answers in his head. Tell us about yourself. Why do you want to work here? Describe a time you handled conflict. He didn't rehearse the one question that had haunted every interview since Nia was born. Do you have children? He had learned that some people heard that and immediately pictured inconvenience, unreliability, distraction. He had learned that some people didn't even hear his qualifications after that. Still, he showed up. Ravenhurst Solutions sat in a tower of glass and steel that reflected the sky like it owned it. In the lobby, people moved like they had destinations that mattered. Shoes clicked on marble. Voices stayed low. A security guard glanced at Marcus's ID, then glanced again, just long enough to remind Marcus that he was being measured. He rode the elevator up with 3 other applicants. Nobody spoke. The silence felt expensive. On the 7th floor, the waiting area looked like it had been designed to intimidate. Clean lines, cold lighting, chairs that were comfortable only if you were used to discomfort. A receptionist handed him a form with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Please have a seat," she said. Marcus sat. He adjusted his tie. He smoothed his resume even though it was already smooth. The other applicants were polished in a way Marcus recognized. 2 men in crisp suits, 1 woman in heels with a portfolio that probably cost more than his monthly groceries. They scrolled their phones like their lives were not on the line. Marcus tried not to think about Naya's face. The door opened. A man stepped out, laughing, shaking hands with someone inside, and Marcus noticed the laugh first, sharp, careless, like it belonged to someone who never worried about consequences. Then the man's gaze landed on Marcus, and the laugh faded into a smirk that didn't disappear, just changed shape. "Marcus Reed?" the receptionist called. Marcus stood. His legs felt heavier than they should have. "Right here," he said, voice steady. He followed the hallway to the HR office. The door closed behind him with a soft final sound. The interviewer sat at a desk too big for the room, as if the furniture was designed to announce status. He had a neat haircut and a watch that flashed when he moved his wrist. A nameplate read, "Derek Hawthorne, Senior Talent Acquisition." Derek didn't stand to greet him. He gestured vaguely to a chair. Marcus sat. Derek looked at Marcus's resume like he was reading a menu he wasn't impressed by. "So," Derek said, dragging the word out. "Marcus Reed." "Yes, sir." Derek's eyes flicked up. "We're pretty selective here." "I understand," Marcus said. Derek leaned back. "Tell me about your last position." Marcus answered, clear, concise. He spoke about coordinating schedules, handling client requests, managing office flow. He spoke about reliability, about problem solving, about teamwork. Derek nodded the way people nod when they're pretending to listen. Then Derek asked it, like it was casual. "Do you have any personal obligations that would interfere with work, family stuff?" Marcus knew what that meant. He swallowed, then held his ground. "I have a daughter," he said. "She's 6. I've arranged childcare and backup support. It won't affect my performance." Derek blinked as if Marcus had confessed to something embarrassing. "A daughter," Derek repeated, lips twitching. "And you're a single parent?" "Yes," Marcus said, voice careful. "My wife passed away." For a fraction of a second, Marcus saw something in Derek's eyes. Not sympathy, just calculation. Like this was useful information. Derek let out a little laugh. Not a full laugh, the kind you do when you want someone to feel small. "Right," Derek said. "Okay." Marcus's stomach tightened. Derek tapped the resume with one finger. "Look, I'm going to be honest. This role can be demanding. Late meetings, unexpected client needs, travel sometimes. A person with a kid. It's complicated." "I'm prepared for that," Marcus said, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. "I've handled demanding schedules before." Derek tilted his head, studying Marcus like a product on a shelf. "And," Derek added, as if he'd just remembered something, "you know, culture matters. Fit matters." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure what you mean." Derek smiled. "We're very polished here, very corporate. You seem like a good guy, hard-working, but some people," he shrugged, "they might not see you as front office material." Marcus felt heat rise behind his eyes, not tears, anger, humiliation. He kept his voice calm because he had learned that calm was survival. "My experience is front office," he said. "I'm qualified." Derek's smile widened like he enjoyed the pushback. "Sure," Derek said, "but the reality is someone with your circumstances isn't convenient, and I don't want to waste your time." Marcus stared at him, heartbeat loud in his ears. He could smell the office's air freshener, something citrusy trying to cover the scent of power. "So I'm not being considered," Marcus said. Derek leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "I'm saying this isn't the right place for you." There was a second where Marcus wanted to ask questions, wanted to demand explanations, wanted to force Derek to say out loud what he was implying. But Marcus thought of Naya, thought of rent, thought of how easy it was for a black man to be labeled aggressive if he raised his voice by even a half inch, so he stood. "Thank you for your time," Marcus said, voice flat. Derek waved a hand like Marcus was dismissed. "Good luck out there." Marcus walked out. The door closed behind him, and the sound felt like the end of a song. In the hallway, he forced his shoulders to stay straight. He forced his face to stay neutral. But as soon as he reached the waiting area, the energy drained out of him like someone pulled a plug. He sat down. His hands trembled slightly. He stared at his shoes as if they could tell him what to do next. That was when he noticed the woman beside him. She hadn't been there earlier. Or maybe she had, and he'd been too focused on surviving his own interview to see her. She looked like she belonged in corporate spaces, but there was a softness to her eyes that didn't match the building's coldness. She held a folder, neat and organized, and a small leather notebook was tucked into her bag. She glanced at Marcus, and in that glance there was a question. People could sense defeat. It had a smell. Marcus tried to ignore it. He didn't want pity. But then she spoke quietly. "Did it go okay?" Marcus let out a bitter exhale before he could stop himself. "Depends on what you mean by okay," he said. She shifted slightly in her seat. "What happened?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't owe her his story. He didn't owe anyone anything. But there was something about the way she asked. Not nosy, not dramatic, just human. He laughed, Marcus said, voice low. "Because I have a daughter. Told me I'm not convenient. Told me I don't look like I fit in here." The woman's eyes narrowed. "He said that?" Marcus nodded, staring forward. Not in those exact words, but, you know. Silence settled between them, heavy. Then Marcus glanced at her folder. "You're up next?" She nodded. "Yes." Marcus felt a strange impulse. Like if he couldn't save himself, maybe he could keep someone else from walking into the same trap blind. He leaned slightly toward her. "Listen," he said, keeping his voice quiet. "They'll ask you about availability. They'll ask you to describe conflict, and he'll throw in a question about your personal life like it's nothing." The woman blinked. "You're giving me tips?" Marcus shrugged, trying to act like it was casual. "I don't want you going in there unprepared." She looked at him like she was trying to understand him. "What's your name?" "Marcus," he said. "Marcus Reed." "Ava," she replied. "Ava Sinclair." Marcus nodded. "Okay, Ava. If he asks you why you want to work here, don't talk about the company's reputation. Talk about what you bring. Keep it practical." Ava listened closely, eyes steady. "And if he asks about family," Marcus continued, voice softer, "don't apologize. Answer like being responsible is part of your strength." Ava's lips parted slightly, like she was going to argue, then she just nodded. "Thank you," she said. Marcus gave her a tired smile. "Good luck." The receptionist called Ava's name. Ava stood, adjusting her jacket, then paused. "You're helping me," she said, "after what he did." Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Because you're walking into the same room," he said, "and nobody deserves to be laughed at for loving their kid." Ava's gaze held his for a moment longer than necessary. Then she turned and walked toward the interview room. Marcus watched her go, and for a second, he forgot his own humiliation. For a second, he hoped she would win, just to prove something to the world. When the door closed behind her, Marcus leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He could still hear Derek's laugh. He didn't notice Ava's notebook slipping slightly from her bag, the corner of a page filled with tiny, sharp handwriting. He didn't notice that Ava wasn't nervous the way most applicants were. He didn't notice the way the receptionist looked at Ava like she couldn't place her face. Marcus just sat there, trying to figure out how to walk back into his daughter's life with empty hands and a brave face. Inside the interview room, Ava Sinclair sat in the chair Marcus had just left. Derek Hawthorne smiled like he was about to enjoy himself. "Ava Sinclair," he said, drawing the name out as if tasting it. "Nice to meet you." Ava returned the smile politely. "Nice to meet you as well." Derek flipped open her resume. "Impressive background," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't like being impressed. Ava kept her posture relaxed. "Thank you." Derek asked a few standard questions, and Ava answered smoothly. She spoke like someone who didn't need to prove she belonged, like someone who already knew she did. Derek's eyes narrowed as he listened. Something about her confidence irritated him. Then, like clockwork, he leaned back and asked it. "Do you have any personal obligations that would interfere with work?" Ava held his gaze. "I'm a parent," she said calmly. "I have a child." Derek blinked, then laughed, an open, disrespectful sound that filled the room like smoke. "A parent," he repeated, amused. "Let me guess, single?" Ava didn't flinch. "Yes." Derek shook his head as if he couldn't believe people showed up like this. "Wow," he said, still laughing. "Okay, I'm going to save us both time." Ava's voice stayed even. "Go ahead." Derek leaned forward, elbows on the desk as if delivering wisdom. "This isn't a daycare," he said. "This is Ravenhurst. We need people who are fully committed." "A single mother?" He smiled like he thought he was being funny. "You're probably better suited for babysitting or working in childcare, something aligned with your lifestyle." Ava stared at him. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Then Ava spoke, and her calm was sharper than any shout. "Is that what you said to the man who was here before me?" Derek's smile faltered slightly. "Excuse me?" "The applicant before me," Ava repeated, voice precise. "Marcus Reed, did you laugh at him too?" Derek recovered quickly, but something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, suspicion. "I don't discuss other candidates." Ava nodded slowly, as if confirming something. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the small leather notebook. Derek's eyes followed it, confused. Ava placed the notebook on her lap, not threatening, just deliberate. "And you're comfortable saying, to my face," she said, "that I'm unfit for this job because I have a child?" Derek shrugged, trying to regain control. "It's not personal. It's reality." Ava's gaze didn't waver. "Your reality," she said, "seems very small." Derek's smile turned sharp. "Look, Ava, I'm sure you're capable, but culture fit matters, and with your situation, you'd struggle with our pace." Ava inhaled slowly, then closed her notebook as if concluding a chapter. "I see," she said. Derek leaned back, satisfied, thinking he'd won. Ava stood up. Derek blinked. "We're not finished." Ava looked down at him, and there was something in her expression that made the air feel heavier. "We are," she said, and she walked out, leaving Derek staring after her like he'd just watched someone ignore a rule he thought was unbreakable. In the hallway, Ava's steps were measured, not rushed, not shaking. She passed the receptionist without stopping. The receptionist looked up, surprised. "Ms. Sinclair?" Ava didn't answer. She walked straight past the waiting area, and Marcus looked up as she passed. Their eyes met. Marcus saw something in her face. Anger, yes, but controlled, focused, like fire in a glass container. Ava paused for half a second. Marcus opened his mouth, unsure what he was going to say. Maybe an apology that his warning hadn't been enough. Maybe a question. Ava just nodded once, small and firm, and she kept walking. Marcus watched her go, confused, until she disappeared around the corner. A minute later, the receptionist called, "Next applicant." Life moved on, like it always did, even after someone had been humiliated. Marcus stood up slowly. He tucked his folder under his arm. He walked toward the elevators. On the ride down, the mirrored walls reflected him from every angle. He looked like a man dressed for a life he wasn't allowed to enter. In the lobby, the security guard scanned his badge and gave it back without a word. Outside, the wind was sharp. Manhattan's winter air cut through Marcus's coat. He started walking toward the subway, head down, hands in pockets, trying to swallow the bitter taste of the day. His phone buzzed. A message from Nia's school. Reminder, early pickup tomorrow. Teacher training. Marcus stared at the text, then looked up at the tower behind him. He felt something inside him twist, fear and exhaustion braided together. He was already failing at being everything at once, father, employee, adult who could keep the lights on. He tightened his grip on his phone until his fingers hurt. That night, Marcus cooked dinner with the same quiet determination he used to tie his tie. Nia sat at the table coloring a picture of a house with a giant sun in the corner. "Did you get the job?" she asked without looking up. Marcus's throat tightened. He didn't want to break her hope. He didn't want to teach her disappointment too early. "They said no," he said softly. Nia stopped coloring. She looked up, eyes wide. "Why?" Marcus forced a smile. "Sometimes adults make decisions that don't make sense," he said. "It's not because you did anything wrong, and it's not because I did anything wrong." Nia frowned, thinking hard. "Did they not like your tie?" Marcus let out a laugh that surprised him. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe my tie was too powerful for them." Nia nodded seriously, satisfied. "You need a new one," she declared. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "One day," he said. "I promise." Later, after Nia fell asleep, Marcus sat on the couch with the lights off, staring at his resume like it had betrayed him. He thought about Derek's smirk, about the word convenient. He thought about how often people treated parents like liabilities instead of proof that someone could carry responsibility. He wondered how many doors he'd have to walk through before one stayed open. Across the city, in a quiet conference room with the lights still on long after most offices had gone dark, Ava Sinclair sat alone. Her leather notebook lay open on the table, filled with quick notes, not about interview questions, about behavior, about laughter, about disrespect. Ava tapped her pen against the page, eyes distant. She had accepted the CEO position at Ravenhurst Solutions 3 weeks ago. On paper, it was a win. Higher salary, more influence, a chance to reshape a company that was profitable but rotten in places people pretended not to smell. But before she officially took her seat, she wanted to see the company as it really was, without polished presentations and rehearsed smiles. So she had come in undercover, pretending to be an applicant, testing the water, listening for cracks. And what she had found in Derek Hawthorne's office wasn't a crack. It was a warning siren. Ava's phone buzzed with an email from compliance. HR complaints increasing, candidate files missing, unexplained delays. Ava stared at the email, then glanced down at her notebook. She wrote one more line, slow and deliberate. Marcus Reed, single father, disqualified for having a child. Then she closed the notebook. In the morning, Ravenhurst woke up like it always did. Coffee machines humming, elevators filling, people filing into glass rooms to talk about numbers. But something was different. A notice appeared on every manager's calendar. Mandatory all-hands HR meeting, 9:00 a.m., attendance required. Derek Hawthorne arrived with the confidence of someone who believed he was untouchable. He walked into the conference room and greeted people with the same polished grin, the same easy jokes. He didn't notice the legal counsel seated quietly at the back. He didn't notice the head of operations sitting stiffly, eyes cautious. At exactly 9, the door opened. Ava Sinclair walked in. The room shifted, chairs scraped, people stood up, startled, like a wave moved through them. Derek froze. Ava looked different than she had the day before, not because her face had changed, but because power changes the way people see you. She wore a dark suit that fit like certainty. Her expression was calm. Her eyes were not. "Good morning," Ava said, voice clear. A stunned silence answered, then someone stammered, "Ms. Sinclair, welcome." Ava nodded once. "Thank you," she said. "Please sit." Everyone sat slowly, except Derek, who seemed stuck between standing and collapsing. Ava placed her leather notebook on the table. The quiet sound of it landing felt louder than it should have. "I'm going to be direct," Ava said. "I've received multiple complaints regarding this department." Derek swallowed. Ava continued, complaints about professionalism, about respect, about candidates being mocked, and complaints about applicant files going missing. The room's air tightened. Ava turned her gaze to Derek like a camera zooming in. "Derek Hawthorne," she said. Derek forced a laugh that came out thin. "Yes, Ms. Sinclair, Ava raised a hand, stopping him without aggression. "Yesterday," she said, "I sat in your office as a candidate. I listened to you laugh at me when I disclosed I'm a parent. I listened to you suggest I was better suited for babysitting." Derek's face went pale. Ava didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "And before me," Ava continued, "you did the same to another candidate, Marcus Reed, a single father." Several heads turned. People whispered under their breath, shocked. Ava opened her notebook. "You called his situation inconvenient," she said. "You implied he didn't look like he belonged in an office. Those are your words, and they are unacceptable." Derek's mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Ava looked around the room. Ravenhurst Solutions will not operate with discrimination disguised as culture fit. We will not humiliate people for being parents. We will not treat human lives as inconveniences. She closed the notebook. "Effective immediately," Ava said. "Derek Hawthorne is terminated." The word terminated hit the room like a dropped glass. Derek jerked upright. "You can't. This is ridiculous." Ava turned slightly toward legal counsel. "Please escort Mr. Hawthorne," she said, then looked back at Derek. "Your access will be revoked within 10 minutes. Any personal items will be returned to you after review." Derek's face twisted with anger and panic. "This is a witch hunt," he snapped. "You're making an example." Ava's voice stayed calm. "No," she said. "I'm making a correction." Two security staff appeared at the door, discreet but firm. Derek glared around the room as if searching for allies. No one met his eyes. As he was escorted out, the conference room stayed silent, filled with the uncomfortable realization that they had watched something wrong for a long time and called it normal. Ava let the silence sit just long enough to make it unforgettable. Then she spoke again. "Now," she said, "we're going to talk about how this happened, how files went missing, how candidates were treated, and what we're going to change." For the next hour, Ava asked questions like someone pulling threads from a sweater that had been hiding holes. She requested audit trails. She demanded process transparency. She assigned oversight. She made it clear that how we do things was not a shield. When the meeting ended, people left quietly, shaken. Ava remained seated, looking at her notebook. She flipped to the page with Marcus Reed's name, and then she made a call. Marcus was in Queens, scrambling to adjust his schedule after the school's early pickup notice, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers rarely carried good news, but he answered anyway. "Hello? Marcus Reed?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes." "This is Ava Sinclair," the voice said. Marcus sat down slowly. His brain took a second to catch up. Ava Sinclair, the woman from the waiting room. He pictured her walking into the interview room. He pictured her anger. "Yes," Marcus said cautiously. "Hi." "I owe you an apology," Ava said, "for what happened to you at Ravenhurst Solutions." Marcus swallowed. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," Ava said, voice steady. "Because I'm the new CEO." Marcus went silent. For a moment, he thought he misheard. "I came in undercover," Ava continued. "I needed to see the company without filters, and I saw what was done to you." Marcus's chest tightened, a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Ava's voice softened slightly. "I terminated the interviewer who disrespected you," she said, "and I'm auditing HR processes." Marcus couldn't speak. He looked at his daughter's backpack near the door, small and bright in a world that felt too sharp. Ava continued, "I also read your resume, and I'd like to invite you in for a formal meeting with the operations team, not HR, if you're still interested." Marcus's throat tightened. "Why, Hita?" he asked, the word coming out rough. There was a pause on the line, and when Ava spoke, her answer was simple. "Because you were humiliated," she said, "and you still used your time to help someone else. That tells me more than any interview question." Marcus stared at the wall, blinking. He heard Naya in the other room humming to herself. He thought of Derek's laugh, and then he thought of Ava's calm voice. Marcus began. "Marcus," Ava said, "you don't have to decide right this second, but I'd like to meet you. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Marcus swallowed hard. I'll be there, he said. When he hung up, his hands were shaking. Not from fear this time, from the unfamiliar feeling of a door opening. The next morning, Marcus wore the same navy tie. He considered buying a new one, then stopped himself. He didn't want to pretend he was someone else to be accepted. He packed Nia's lunch, dropped her at school, and headed back into Manhattan. This time, when he walked into Ravenhurst's lobby, the security guard greeted him differently. Not warmer exactly, but more attentive. Mr. Reed, the guard said, checking the visitor list. You're expected. Elevator bank C. Marcus nodded, heart pounding. On the 7th floor, the waiting area felt the same, cold and polished, but Marcus felt different. He wasn't here to beg. He was here because someone had asked him to return. Ava met him herself. She didn't approach like a boss performing friendliness. She walked toward him with the same calm focus he'd seen the day before, but now there was something else too, respect. Marcus, she said, offering her hand. Marcus stood and shook it. Her grip was firm. Ava, he replied. Thank you for coming, she said. Come with me. She led him down a hallway that didn't end at HR. They entered a conference room with a window that looked out over the city, sunlight spilling across the table like it belonged there. 2 people were already seated, a man in a gray suit with thoughtful eyes and a woman with a tablet, posture sharp. This is Daniel Kim, Ava said, nodding to the man. Chief Operating Officer, and this is Priya Shah, Director of Client Services. Marcus shook hands, trying to ignore how his pulse thudded in his ears. Ava sat at the head of the table, but her tone was different than the day before. Not performative, just clear. I've reviewed Marcus's experience, Ava said. I want you to meet him. Daniel studied Marcus. Your background includes office operations, scheduling, customer resolution, he said. You've done contract work recently. Yes, Marcus said. I went where the work was. Priya leaned forward slightly. Tell me about a time you handled a difficult client situation. Marcus answered. He didn't embellish. He described the problem, the steps he took, the outcome. He spoke about staying calm, about listening, about solving without ego. Daniel nodded slowly. Priya tapped notes into her tablet. Then Daniel asked, Why Ravenhurst? Marcus paused. The honest answer was money, stability, insurance. But he didn't want to sound desperate. Desperation was something people used to justify disrespect. Because I'm looking for a place where I can build, Marcus said. Not just survive from contract to contract. I want to contribute somewhere long-term. I'm good at keeping things moving. I'm good at making sure small problems don't become disasters. Ava watched him closely, expression unreadable. Priya asked, What does reliability mean to you? Marcus almost smiled. It means when you say you'll be somewhere, he said, you're there. It means other people can plan because you exist like a promise, not a question mark. The room fell quiet. Daniel exchanged a glance with Priya. Ava leaned back slightly. One more question, she said. Marcus looked at her, bracing. Ava's voice softened. Your daughter, she said. How do you manage childcare? Marcus's shoulders tightened, but Ava's eyes weren't judgmental. They were practical, concerned. Like she was asking because she wanted the truth, not because she wanted to use it against him. I plan, Marcus said. I have a primary arrangement and backups. I don't let my daughter's needs become someone else's problem, but I also won't pretend she doesn't exist. She's my responsibility, and that responsibility makes me more organized, not less. Ava nodded slowly. Daniel cleared his throat. Marcus, he said, we have an opening in operations support. It interfaces with client services and internal scheduling. It's fast-paced. Marcus held his breath. Daniel continued, I think you'd fit. Marcus blinked. Priya nodded once. I agree. Marcus looked at Ava, and for the first time since yesterday, his eyes felt hot. Ava didn't smile widely. She didn't turn it into a celebration. She just nodded, as if stating something that should have been obvious from the beginning. We'll make it official, Ava said. If you accept. Marcus exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping him. Yes, he said. I accept. Ava's gaze held his. Good, she said. Welcome to Ravenhurst. When Marcus left the building that day, the sky looked the same, the air still sharp with winter, but the city felt different, like it had softened its grip by 1 inch. He picked up Nia from school early because of teacher training. She ran to him, hair bouncing, purple clip shining. "Daddy!" she shouted. "Did you get good news?" Marcus knelt, pulled her into a tight hug and whispered, "Yeah," voice thick. "We got good news." Nia pulled back, eyes wide. "We?" Marcus smiled. "Wieso," he repeated. "Because I'm not doing this without you." That night, Marcus hung his visitor badge on the fridge like it was a trophy. Nia stared at it. "That means you're important," she said solemnly. Marcus laughed. "It means I'm employed," he said. Nia nodded as if employment was the greatest magic on earth. "So, new tie?" Marcus looked at his worn navy tie draped over a chair. "Soon," he promised. "But first, groceries." Nia giggled and ran down the hallway. The next week at Ravenhurst was a blur of orientation documents, system logins, and people who seemed surprised to see Marcus there. Surprised in that subtle way that told him they had never expected someone like him to be invited. Marcus didn't react to their surprise. He just worked. He learned the scheduling software quickly. He smoothed out bottlenecks. He noticed things others ignored, like how one team always got overloaded on Mondays because someone had built the calendar around a person who no longer worked there. He solved problems before people realized they had them. And slowly, people started coming to him not because they were told to, but because they trusted him. Ava's presence in the building changed the atmosphere. People spoke more carefully, not because they were scared, but because they realized someone was finally paying attention. She held meetings that were shorter and sharper. She asked questions that made people uncomfortable in the way truth often does, and she was saved. One afternoon, Marcus was in the break room, refilling his coffee when Ava walked in. She paused when she saw him. "How's your first week?" she asked. Marcus kept his tone professional. "Busy," he said, in a good way. Ava nodded. She reached for a cup, then hesitated as if deciding whether to say something that wasn't purely business. "I read your file," she said. Marcus's body tensed slightly. Old instinct. Ava noticed and lifted a hand. "Not like that," she said. "Not to judge you, to understand you." Marcus studied her face. "Okay," he said cautiously. Ava looked down at the coffee machine, then back at him. "Your wife," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." Marcus didn't expect that. He didn't expect a CEO to say it like a person. He nodded once. "Thank you." Ava's eyes softened slightly. "You're doing a lot alone," she said. Marcus gave a small shrug that was more reflex than dismissal. "It's what it is," he said. Ava leaned against the counter. "It doesn't have to be invisible," she said. "The work you do at home, the work you do here." Marcus glanced away, uncomfortable with being seen too clearly. Ava continued, "If you ever need flexibility, real flexibility, not the kind companies pretend to offer, tell me. We're building policies that match reality." Marcus looked back at her. "Why do you care?" he asked, then immediately regretted the bluntness. Ava didn't take offense. "Because I'm a parent too," she said simply. "And because I saw how easily people turn responsibility into an insult." Marcus's throat tightened. Ava picked up her coffee and nodded once, like she'd said what she needed to say. "Good work this week," she added, then walked out. Marcus stood there for a moment, holding his cup, feeling something unfamiliar, being respected without having to earn it through suffering. Over the next month, Marcus became a quiet anchor in the building. When client services panicked over a missed deadline, Marcus traced the issue to a simple scheduling overlap and fixed it within an hour. When a junior employee burst into tears after being scolded by a manager, Marcus walked her through the solution step by step, calm voice, no judgment, and then reminded her, softly, that mistakes were not identity. People began to trust him, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way that mattered. They looped him in. They asked his opinion. They listened. Ava noticed. She started asking Marcus to sit in on operational reviews, not as decoration, as contribution. The first time, Marcus walked into a meeting with directors and VPs and felt the old tension rise, how he had to be perfect just to be considered acceptable. Ava looked up as he entered and said, Marcus, take the seat beside me. Not over there, beside. It was a small thing. A chair, a distance measured in feet, but in corporate spaces, proximity was a language. Marcus sat. He kept his notes neat. He spoke when asked, clear and calm. After the meeting, Priya pulled him aside. "You saved us last week," she said, half smiling. "I don't know how you saw that calendar issue so fast." Marcus shrugged. "Chaos has patterns," he said. "If you've lived long enough, you start recognizing them." Priya's smile faded into something thoughtful. "Well," she said, "I'm glad you're here." Marcus walked back to his desk, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was borrowing space. Meanwhile, Derek Hawthorne was living the kind of humiliation he had once served to others. He told people he left by choice. He told people Ravenhurst was going downhill. He told people Ava was unstable. But in truth, he was furious. He was furious that someone he had laughed at, someone he'd assumed would just disappear, had returned. He was furious that the woman he had mocked had turned out to be the CEO. And fury, when it can't find justice, often chooses sabotage. 2 weeks after his termination, whispers started circulating. At first, they were vague. "Did you hear Marcus got hired because of Ava? Funny how he's always in meetings now. I heard they set Derek up." The rumors moved like smoke, quiet, everywhere, hard to grab. Marcus noticed the change in people's eyes, the half-smiles that didn't reach, the conversations that stopped when he approached. He pretended not to see it because he wanted to believe competence would outshine suspicion. But one afternoon, he walked into the break room and heard his name in a tone that made his stomach drop. "I'm just saying," someone whispered. "It looks suspicious." Marcus stopped at the doorway. The room fell silent. People looked down at their cups. Marcus turned around and walked back to his desk like nothing happened, but the bitterness spread in his chest. That night, after putting Nia to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table and stared at the purple hairclip in his palm. Nia had asked him earlier, "Why do grown-ups whisper?" Marcus had laughed it off. "Because they're silly," he'd said. But sitting there alone, Marcus felt the familiar ache. No matter how hard he worked, people still loved an easy story more than a true one. The next morning, Ava called Marcus into her office. Her office was minimal. Clean desk, city view, no unnecessary trophies. It felt like a space designed for work, not ego. Marcus stood near the door. "You wanted to see me?" Ava looked up from her computer. "Yes," she said. "Close the door." Marcus did. Ava studied him for a moment. "They're talking," she said, blunt. Marcus's throat tightened. "I know." Ava's eyes sharpened. "About you, about me, about Derek." Marcus held still. "It's not true," he said. "I know," Ava replied. Marcus blinked, surprised by how fast she said it. Ava leaned back slightly. "Derek is spreading it," she said, "through external contacts, former employees, anything he can reach." Marcus's jaw clenched. "So what do we do?" Ava's voice stayed calm. "We address it," she said. "Directly." Marcus hesitated. "Won't that make it bigger?" Ava's gaze held his. "Silence lets lies settle," she said. "Truth needs air." Marcus swallowed. He had spent years surviving by staying quiet, staying calm, not making waves, but he was tired of shrinking. Ava continued, "I'm calling a brief staff meeting this afternoon. I want you there." Marcus's heart thudded. "Me?" Ava nodded. "Because the rumor is about you," she said. "And because, Marcus, you have the right to stand in a room and tell the truth about your own life." Marcus looked down at his hands. He realized they were slightly shaking. Ava's voice softened. "You don't have to do it alone," she added. Marcus looked up. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. Ava's expression shifted, something human passing through the CEO armor. "Because I know what it feels like," she said, "to be reduced to a story you didn't write." Marcus nodded slowly. That afternoon, the meeting room filled quickly. People sat with uneasy posture, whispering to each other, glancing at Marcus, then away. Ava stood at the front, hands relaxed, expression composed. When the room quieted, Ava spoke. "I'm aware of rumors circulating," she said. Rumors suggesting that hiring decisions were made based on personal relationships rather than competence. Rumors suggesting that Derek Hawthorne was set up. A wave of discomfort moved through the room. Ava's voice stayed even. "Let me be clear. Derek was terminated for documented misconduct, disrespect toward candidates, discriminatory comments, process manipulation. Those facts are recorded." She paused. "And now," Ava said, "I'm going to invite Marcus Reed to speak." The room's attention snapped to Marcus. Marcus stood slowly. His legs felt heavy, but his spine stayed straight. He looked around at faces, some curious, some suspicious, some guilty. He could hear his own heartbeat. Then he thought of Nia's voice. "If they say no, you can still be my daddy." He inhaled. "My name is Marcus Reed," he began, voice steady. "I'm a single father. My wife passed away 2 years ago." The room fell into a deeper quiet. "I came to Ravenhurst because I needed work," Marcus continued. "Not because I wanted special treatment, not because I wanted anyone's pity." His gaze moved across the room, not aggressive, just honest. "When I interviewed," he said, "I was laughed at for being a parent. I was told I wasn't convenient. I was told I didn't fit." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Marcus kept going. "After that interview, I sat in the waiting area feeling humiliated. Then Ava sat beside me as another applicant. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know her title. I didn't know anything except that she was about to walk into the same room." He paused, letting the truth settle. "So I warned her," Marcus said. "I gave her advice, because nobody deserves to be mocked for having a child." Marcus looked toward Ava briefly. She nodded once, almost imperceptible. Marcus faced the room again. "I didn't set anyone up," he said. "I didn't ask for anyone to be fired. I told the truth when I was asked. That's it." His voice lowered slightly. "I'm here because I can do the job, and because the people who hired me looked at my work, not my circumstances." Silence. Then Marcus added quietly, "And if being a parent makes some people assume I'm unreliable, I invite you to watch my work. Watch my consistency. Watch what I deliver. That's the only story I'm interested in." He sat down, pulse pounding. For a second, nobody moved. Then Ava spoke again, voice calm. "Thank you," she said, looking at Marcus. Then she looked at the room. "That's the truth. If anyone has concerns, my door is open. But harassment and rumor-mongering are not part of our culture." The meeting ended with people leaving in a quieter way than they arrived. Some avoided Marcus's eyes, but a few didn't. A young analyst approached him afterward, hesitating. "I'm sorry," she said softly, for assuming." Marcus nodded once. "Thank you," he said. Priya appeared next. "That took courage," she said. Marcus let out a breath. "It took exhaustion," he admitted. Priya smiled gently. "Sometimes that's the same thing." When Marcus returned to his desk, he found a small note placed neatly beside his keyboard. No signature. Just 3 words. "You belong here." Marcus stared at it for a long moment, then folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet behind the extra purple hair clip. That evening, Ava stayed late. Marcus noticed the light still on in her office as he prepared to leave. He hesitated, then walked toward her door. He knocked lightly. Ava looked up. "Come in," she said. Marcus stepped inside. "I just wanted to say," he began, then stopped, unsure how to say it without sounding dramatic. Ava watched him, waiting. "I didn't think I could do that," Marcus said finally. "Speak like that in front of everyone." Ava nodded slowly. "You did," she said. "And you were honest." Marcus glanced at the city view behind her. The sky was dark, scattered with lights that looked like distant promises. Ava's voice softened. "How's Naya?" she asked. Marcus's expression eased. "She's good," he said. "She thinks my tie is too powerful." Ava's lips curved into a real smile. "She sounds wise." Marcus hesitated, then said, "I keep an extra hair clip in my pocket, for luck." Ava's eyes warmed. "Does it work?" she asked. Marcus thought of the last 2 days. Humiliation, then justice, then an unexpected job offer, then standing up in a room and surviving it. He nodded. "I think it does," he said. Ava leaned back slightly, studying him. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I'm glad you're here." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. Marcus swallowed, unsure what to do with the warmth spreading in his chest. "I should go," he said, voice gentle. "My babysitter charges extra after 7. Ava's smile lingered. "Go," she said, "and thank you again." Marcus left her office, and as he walked toward the elevator, he realized something surprising. The building didn't feel like a fortress tonight. It felt, just a little, like a place he could breathe. Over the next few months, Ravenhurst began to change in ways that weren't flashy but mattered. Ava introduced a formal parent support policy, flexible scheduling options, clear expectations, no hidden punishments. She insisted on structured interviews with standardized questions to reduce bias. She had HR retrained, audited, rebuilt. And every change came with resistance, quiet grumbling from people who liked the old way because it served them. But Ava didn't flinch. Marcus watched it all with a mix of admiration and caution. He had learned not to trust sudden goodness. Still, he couldn't ignore what he saw. Ava didn't just punish one bad actor, she corrected the system that allowed him. That kind of leadership was rare. Meanwhile, Marcus's life outside Ravenhurst remained real. Naya still got sick at inconvenient times. Babysitters still canceled. School events still appeared on calendars like surprise tests. Some nights Marcus sat on the couch, tie draped over a chair, answering emails with one hand while packing a lunch with the other. And yet for the first time since his wife died, Marcus felt like he wasn't drowning alone. One Tuesday, Naya had a school recital. Marcus had forgotten it was during a critical client meeting. He stared at his calendar, panic rising, feeling the old familiar shame, failing at one role because he tried to honor another. He walked into Ava's office, heart pounding. "Ava," he said, voice tight, "I need to ask—" Ava looked up immediately. "What's wrong?" Marcus swallowed. "My daughter's recital is today. I thought it was next week. And the client meeting—" Ava's expression didn't change into annoyance. It changed into focus. "Who's running the client meeting?" she asked. "Daniel and Priya," Marcus replied, "but I'm coordinating the deliverables." Ava nodded. "Send them a concise handoff email," she said, "and go to your daughter's recital." Marcus blinked. "Just like that?" Ava's tone was firm, almost impatient with the idea that this should be difficult. "Just like that," she said. "Your child's recital happens once. The client meeting will happen again." Marcus's throat tightened. Ava added, quieter, "I didn't build policies for decoration, Marcus. I built them because life is real." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Thank you," he said. Ava nodded. "Go," she said. "And tell Nia her Thai expert owes her a compliment." Marcus smiled, startled by how warm that made him feel. "I will," he promised. That evening, Marcus sat in a school auditorium holding a small program, watching Nia on stage in a glittery paper crown. Naya scanned the crowd, eyes searching. Then she spotted him and grinned so wide Marcus felt something in his chest crack open. When she sang, her voice was slightly off-key and completely perfect. Afterward, she ran to him. "Did you see me?" she asked breathlessly. Marcus knelt, hugging her tight. "I saw you," he said. "You were amazing." Naya beamed. "I told everyone my dad works in a big building," she whispered proudly, "and that my dad's boss is nice." Marcus froze for half a second. "You told them that?" Naya nodded seriously. "Because it's true," she said. Marcus swallowed, looking at his daughter's shining face, and realized that when children trust you, you start to want to deserve it even more. The next day at Ravenhurst, Marcus found a small box on his desk. Inside was a navy tie, new, crisp, elegant, no note, no signature. Marcus stared at it, stunned. Then he noticed a small purple ribbon tied around the box like a quiet joke. He looked up and saw Ava passing down the hallway. She didn't look at him, but as she walked by, she lifted her hand slightly, almost imperceptibly, and tapped her own collar as if adjusting a tie. Marcus felt his eyes sting. He didn't cry, not in the office, but he put the tie away carefully, like it was something sacred. That tie wasn't just fabric. It was proof that someone had seen him, seen his effort, his dignity, his quiet endurance, and decided he deserved something new. Derek Hawthorne, meanwhile, watched all of this from the outside like a man pressing his face to a window. He tried to apply elsewhere, but the world of corporate HR was smaller than he'd assumed. Word traveled. And every time someone asked about his departure, Derek's story sounded more desperate. So he did what bitter people often do when they can't control the truth. He tried to poison it. He sent anonymous emails to employees. He messaged people on LinkedIn. He implied lawsuits. He hinted at scandals. Most of it didn't stick. But one rumor landed hard enough to bruise, that Ava and Marcus were in a secret relationship and the company was being run on favoritism. It was cruel because it twisted something real, respect, into something dirty. Marcus found out about the rumor when Priya pulled him aside with a tight expression. "It's getting louder," she said. Marcus felt his stomach drop. "I already spoke once," he said. "What else do they want from me?" Priya's eyes softened. "They want to believe the easiest story," she said, "because the hardest story is that they tolerated discrimination and didn't stop it." Marcus went home that night furious, not at Ava, not at the company, but at the way people could take a good thing and try to rot it. He tucked Nia into bed, listened to her small breathing as she fell asleep, then sat in the living room with the new tie draped over his knee. He realized something. He couldn't keep living like a man who was grateful for scraps. He had to live like a man who knew his worth, even if others didn't. The next morning, Marcus requested a meeting with Daniel and Priya. Not because he wanted drama, because he wanted clarity. In that meeting, Marcus said calmly, "I want my work evaluated fairly. I want transparency. And I want this rumor addressed officially, not whispered around like it's entertainment." Daniel nodded, jaw tight. "You're right," he said. "This shouldn't be on you." Priya added, "We'll handle it." Ava called another company-wide message, short and direct, reaffirming policy, condemning harassment and rumor spreading, and reinforcing that performance and process integrity were being monitored. The rumor began to die, not because everyone suddenly became good, but because leadership made it expensive to keep it alive. Still, something had changed. Marcus and Ava could feel the tension around them, the way people watched for signs, and that tension did something strange. It made their quiet connection feel louder, even when they said nothing. One evening, Marcus stayed late to finish a scheduling overhaul. The building had emptied out, the noise reduced to distant HVAC hum. When he finally stood to leave, he saw Ava in the hallway, walking alone toward the elevator. He hesitated, then called softly, "Ava." She turned. "Marcus," she said. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, as if the building itself was listening. Marcus stepped closer, keeping a respectful distance. "Are you okay?" he asked. Ava held his gaze. "I'm tired," she admitted. "Not of the work, of the ugliness." Marcus nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It gets under your skin." Ava's eyes flickered. "Sometimes I wonder," she said, voice low, "if changing systems is just moving the dirt around, like it never really leaves." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then said, "My daughter believes in me," he said. "Some days that's the only reason I keep going, because I don't want her to grow up thinking the world is only what hurts her." Ava's expression softened. Marcus continued, "I saw you fire Derek," he said. "Not because you wanted applause, because it was right. That matters. It matters even if the dirt doesn't disappear overnight." Ava's throat moved as she swallowed. "Thank you," she said quietly. Marcus hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out the purple hair clip, Nia's lucky one, between his fingers. Ava's eyes widened slightly. "I keep it," Marcus said, a little embarrassed, "because it reminds me I'm doing this for someone." Ava's gaze dropped to the hair clip, then back to Marcus. "I have something like that," she said. She opened her bag and pulled out the leather notebook. "I write," she said, "because if I don't, I start believing the polite version of reality, and I don't want to." Marcus nodded slowly. They stood there for a moment, two adults holding small objects like shields against a world that could be cruel. Then Ava spoke, voice gentle. "Would you want to get coffee?" she asked. Not as CEO and employee, just as two tired people who survived the same room. Marcus's heart thudded. He thought of rumors, of eyes, of whispers. Then he thought of how lonely survival had been. He smiled softly. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." They went to a small cafe a few blocks away, the kind of place that smelled like cinnamon and late-night conversations. They sat at a corner table. The city moved outside like a river of headlights. At first they talked about work, safe ground. Then Ava asked about Nia. Marcus told her about the purple hair clip, about pancakes, about how Nia thought his tie was too powerful. Ava laughed, a real laugh that made Marcus's chest loosen. Ava spoke about her own child, about the guilt of leadership, about how she'd missed bedtime stories because of board calls, about the ache of being expected to be unbreakable. Marcus listened, not trying to fix, just present. At some point, Ava looked at him and said quietly, "You're different from most people I've met in corporate spaces." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment?" he asked. Ava's lips curved. "It's an observation," she said. "You don't perform." Marcus shrugged. "I don't have the energy," he said. Ava's gaze held his. "Or maybe," she said softly, "you don't need to." Something settled between them then, something tender and careful. Not a dramatic confession, just the quiet recognition of two people who had seen each other clearly. Over time, their coffee meetings became occasional dinners. Dinners became conversations that extended beyond the restaurant, walking through the city with hands in pockets, shoulders close, but not touching. Marcus introduced Ava to Nia gradually, carefully, like you introduce someone to the part of your life that matters most. The first time Ava met Nia, it was accidental. Marcus was leaving the office early to pick Nia up, and Ava happened to be in the lobby. Nia ran toward Marcus the moment she saw him and nearly crashed into Ava. "Whoa," Ava said, stepping back slightly. Nia looked up, wide-eyed. "Sorry," she blurted. Marcus smiled. "Nia," he said gently, "this is Ava." Nia blinked. "The nice boss?" she asked. Marcus froze, embarrassed. Ava laughed softly. "That's me," she said, crouching slightly to Nia's level. "And you must be the tie expert." Nia's eyes lit up. "Yes," she declared proudly. "My dad needs a new tie." Ava glanced up at Marcus with a teasing warmth. "I heard," she said. Marcus shook his head, smiling helplessly. Nia studied Ava. "Do you have kids?" she asked bluntly, the way children do when they don't know how to pretend. Ava nodded. "I do," she said. "One." Nia considered that. "Okay," she decided. "Then you understand." Ava's expression softened. "I think I do," she said. Nia reached into her pocket and pulled out a second purple hair clip, an extra she carried like spare magic. She held it out to Ava. "For luck," she said. Ava blinked, surprised. "Are you sure?" Nia nodded seriously. "My dad keeps one," she said. "So you should have one too." Ava's eyes glistened slightly. She accepted the hair clip carefully, like receiving an award. "Thank you," Ava said softly. Nia nodded, satisfied, then grabbed Marcus's hand. "Come on, Daddy," she said. "We're late." Marcus squeezed her hand and looked at Ava. Ava smiled gently. "Have a good night," she said. Marcus felt the words forming before he could stop them. "You too," he said. "And thank you." Ava touched the hair clip in her palm. "For luck," she said. Weeks turned into months. Ravenhurst, under Ava's leadership, stabilized. More importantly, it became less cruel. And Marcus, under that new stability, began to breathe differently, like someone who had been holding his breath for years and didn't realize it. One evening, after a long day, Marcus and Ava stood on the rooftop terrace of the building, looking out over the city. The wind was cold, but the sky was clear. Ava held her notebook. Marcus held 2 cups of hot chocolate he'd brought up from the cafe downstairs, because Ava had admitted she hated coffee at night. Ava accepted the cup and laughed softly. "You're going to ruin my CEO image," she said. Marcus smirked. "Your CEO image survived undercover interviews," he said. "I think it can survive hot chocolate." Ava took a sip, then looked at Marcus. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked. Marcus's expression turned thoughtful. "Every time I sit in a meeting and nobody questions why I'm there," he admitted. "Every time I pick up Nia and don't panic about rent." Ava nodded slowly. "I think about it too," she said. "Not because I like remembering it, Because I don't want to forget what it's like to be on the other side of a door. Marcus stared out at the city. You changed things, he said. Ava's voice softened. We changed things, she corrected. Marcus glanced at her. We? Ava met his eyes. You didn't disappear, she said. You came back. You stood up. You helped even when you were hurt. That matters. Marcus swallowed, emotion rising unexpectedly. Ava's gaze dropped for a second, then returned to his. And Marcus, she added quietly, I'm glad I met you the way I did. Before titles, before rumors, before any of it. Marcus's voice was soft. Me too, he said. They stood there in the wind, two people who had walked through humiliation and come out holding something gentler than bitterness. Marcus didn't reach for her hand dramatically. Ava didn't lean into him like a movie moment. Instead, their shoulders brushed, light, accidental, real. Ava's breath caught slightly. Marcus looked at her, and in his eyes was a question. Is this okay? Ava nodded, just once. So Marcus let his hand rest near hers on the railing, close enough to feel warmth, not forceful enough to demand. Ava's fingers shifted, and then she laced them with his. It wasn't fireworks. It was permission. It was safety. It was the quiet kind of love that starts after you've survived enough to know what you don't want anymore. Later, when Marcus got home, Naya was already asleep. He stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her small chest rise and fall. He thought of the interview room, the laughter, the smirk, the way he'd walked out feeling invisible. Then he thought of today, his new tie hanging on the chair, his daughter's recital, Ava's hand on the rooftop. He realized something. The story didn't change because the world suddenly became kind. The story changed because someone decided cruelty wasn't normal, because someone decided a parent wasn't a problem, because someone decided a man like Marcus Reed deserved to belong. The next morning, Marcus put on the new tie. It felt strange, crisp against his collar, like a new skin. Nia watched him from the kitchen chair, swinging her feet. Daddy, she said proudly, you look like a superhero. Marcus smiled. Do I? Nia nodded. Yeah, she said, but like an office superhero. Marcus laughed. The most powerful kind, he agreed. As they walked out the door, Marcus felt the purple hair clip in his pocket. Still there, still a quiet reminder, not just of luck, of love, of responsibility, of the truth that being a parent was never a weakness. It was the strongest thing he'd ever been. And if this story touches a place in you, if you've ever been judged for the life you carry, for the people you love, leave a little message for Marcus and Ava in your heart. Because sometimes, the bravest thing isn't fighting back. Sometimes, the bravest thing is walking back in and refusing to shrink.